a rough people, that most of them are wild, and walk about with bowie knives, pistols, and other deadly weapons, that their government tramples upon the rights and lives of millions whom it holds in absolute bondage, and, what is more wicked, that if a man should dare to speak a word against this unjust, inhuman, and wicked institution, he would be insulted by the community, tried and imprisoned, or hung by the law. 34. At this time I saw a book called Uncle Tom's Cabin, in the parlor of a rich native merchant in Calcutta. Not knowing the nature and contents of the book, I opened it and read the letter which a Negro woman wrote to her mistress before her flight with her child towards Canada, the Egypt of the slaves. I read of the pursuit of the master, her crossing the river Ohio, the hospitality of the Quaker, etc. I, of course, took the story as fictitious, something like the Arabian Nights entertainments, for I could not believe that a man could buy or sell a human being, whatever might be his color, intelligence, or position. My friends told me that this book gives a true sketch of American slavery. I would not at first believe it, and, calling up all my good feelings towards the American people, came to the following decision. Slavery might be existing in America, it is a large country, and perhaps among the aborigines, who are wild savages, this system is prevalent. I hoped, also, to hear that the people of the United States are diligently engaged in driving away the men sellers. Sad logic. I saw the picture of the master, a white man, with coat, hat, and watchguard. Even then I could not persuade myself to believe that this man was a citizen of the United States. I thought it was not necessary to believe that all the white people are good. These man, women, and baby sellers are heartless ruffians, whom the laws of the Christian United States cannot always reach. No. I was mistaken still. They are the Americans, the descendants of those who had come over from England. Finally, I concluded that these slaveholders have no women among them, as the tender, kind-hearted women would have put the abominable trade to destruction. To my utter surprise, I was told by my friends that the slaveholders have their families, churches, pastors, etc. God only knows with what a sad shock my heart sank down. I could not but think that in no portion of the globe had the blessed religion of Christ been made into a machine to work for the selfish man, to satisfy his cupidity, as it had been in the United States of America. These men support, by Christianity, that very system of bondage which Christianity came to destroy. The parable of the master releasing his servant from his debt, and of that servant tormenting his fellow servant for a small sum he had owed him, came into my mind, and I realized the truth uttered by those wise lips of Jesus 20 centuries ago. Mr. Dall told me that there are free states in the Union. This puzzled me again. Union of free and slave states. It must be a queer union. No. It cannot be so. St. Paul could not very well understand the communion of things of contrary nature, and what communioneth light with darkness, etc. 2 Cor 6:14-16. The union of fire and water, light and darkness, freedom and slavery is impossible. So I concluded that there are good anti-slavery men and women in America, as it cannot be that human nature there is totally depraved, but these states must be pro-slavery, since he who friendship with Navath made, is judged a partner in the trade. Reading in a small book something like, "The British flag floats over land and sea, and beneath it the slave is free," my joy knew no bounds. Hardly could I read the lines, the tears dimmed my eyes, and I cried, "Father of the poor, bless the flag of England. Wave, wave thou mighty flag with the cross on thy bosom, and draw the low, despised children of God to come under thy protection. Thy charms melt the iron that binds the feet of slaves. Wave majestically and on high, that the bond may see thee through the wide country stretching from Maine to Florida, and from Massachusetts to California." After a few months had passed, instructions from the American Unitarian Association reached Mr. Dall, authorizing him to send a couple of young men to America, that they might prepare themselves for the ministry under its care. Mr. Dall asked the young man who had written to the association to get ready, and hearing that he could not sail alone, found another to join him. By and by the first of these began to make excuses, saying, he would be ready within a year or two, etc., while the second stood alone, ready to come provided he could find a companion. Mr. Dall came to me and laid the affair before me. He did not urge me, but he reminded me of my promise and inclination to come to America. I regarded this as an especial call from God, and thus I prayed, "Father, wilt thou indeed have thy child, who first proposed going to America, carry out the undertaking? I see the cost of the project. It will deprive me of my mother, sisters, brother, home, and kindred during my lifetime, yet, if thou wilt have me make these sacrifices for the benefit of thy other children, thy will be done. Enable me, then, to let the dead bury their dead, and to follow the call of duty." I gave my word to God, through Mr. Dall, and began at once to get ready, because the call was so sudden that there were only 6 or 7 days for making the necessary preparations. I had then been suffering from the effects of a violent sickness, which had confined me to my bed for 21 days, a little while before. My body was so weak that I could hardly stand long without holding to something. But this did not frighten me. Within the weak, unhealthy frame, my moral courage began to move as usual, with vigorous throbbings, and I determined to sail on the day fixed by my friends. It required great caution to arrange my things, as it would have been impossible for me to leave home had any of my nearest relatives known my purpose. I wrote some letters for my mother, uncle, brother, and other friends, and hid them under the papers. The contents of these letters differed according to the person I wrote to, but to no one did I tell where, why, and how long I should be gone. I begged in my letters to 6 different persons that they would take care of my dear mother, asking one to visit her occasionally, the second to attend to her shopping, as the Hindu high-caste females do not go to stores or market, a third to read my letters to her, etc. 3 days, I believe, before I left India, my companion and I were walking on the strand looking at the ships and talking the matter over. He said the Americans are not trustworthy people, that perhaps the captain would take us to some island and sell us to the savages, etc. Once more we talked upon the American slave trade. I hear in this country the pro-slavery people call the abolitionists fanatics, affirming that they misrepresent the system, that they exaggerate the cruelties practiced on the slaves by their masters. But the world beyond the United States does not blame the slaveholders merely for the true or supposed cruelties practiced by them. I hate the system itself. The very name is a terror to me. As a pea has two pods which enclose the seeds arranged in order in its womb, so slavery has two pods, buying and selling human beings, and these enclose in them vices of all descriptions. They say the slaveholders feed and clothe their slaves comfortably. This does not justify the system. They do not deserve our thanks for their kindness to the slaves. Slavery will be profitable in proportion to the good treatment the masters extend towards the slaves, so that kindness to the slaves is generally based upon the self-interest of their masters, for which no thanks are due to them. If ye love your brethren only, what thank have ye? Do not even the publicans so? Who would thank a farmer that feeds and fattens his turkeys to make money out of them at the Thanksgiving market? My young friend, with an astonishing forethought, sketched out the dismal days which would inevitably be our portion if we visited Christian countries. He informed me of a fact which the Trinitarians had told him, that the Unitarians in America are very few in number, a set of fanatic, daring men, who have no truth, no church, no fixed organization, etc. This did not frighten me, for I believed that it is not always the case that truth dwells with the majority. When God destroyed the world by a deluge, the faith of Noah and his small household was entirely different from that of the overwhelming majority, but this made no difference. God approved the truth of this little band, and rejected others. In regard to the outcast life and its attendant sorrows, insults, and helplessness, I looked on them with indifference, believing that there is a being who knows what I need, and will provide for me accordingly. In days of sorrows I will lean towards him, and be comforted. My good Father is the richest, highest, wisest, and most merciful being, so if I trust in him, I shall have no occasion to regret it. I would not let my heart be troubled with these things, with what shall I eat, what shall I drink, and wherewithal shall I be clothed, and with whom shall I live? The laborer is worthy of his hire. My own dear friends would not keep any social intercourse with me, I know, but God will bring others to me, He will raise kind hearts to bless and sympathize with me. When one door is closed against, hundreds are open to you is the Hindu saying, so I would follow the call of duty, in hope, courage, and patience, believing that all things work for the good of him who loves God. My friend fell back, and I stood alone. Mr. Dall seemed to give up all hope of sending young men to America, and asked me if I would act like others. I have put my hands to the plough and I shall not take them back, was my reply. A rich native merchant of Calcutta had told Mr. Dall that he would give the passage money of 2 young men if they came to America, but as my young friend fell back, he paid the passage money and other expenses of 1. The day before my departure I had to go to Calcutta to do some shopping with Mr. Dall. My dear mother inquired of me the reason of my going to Calcutta so early in the morning, as I had to go to the school by 9 a.m. I simply said I should probably return in time. But I did not get home till 9 in the evening. Mr. Dall rather injudiciously detained me in Calcutta, carrying me here and there to see that everything I needed had been bought. I begged him to dismiss me, told him to attend to, and arrange all that was necessary, and it would be agreeable to me. But he would not. This detention had caused such an alarm in my house that were it not a true purpose in me to go, I could not have left home the next morning. I fully realized what the phrase, "wise like a serpent," means. As I was passing by the house of a gentleman, my steps drew the attention of a boy, who cried, "Who are you?" "It is I, Prasono," I answered. "Where have you been, uncle? Your mother has been crying the whole afternoon for you." With slow steps and anxious heart, I entered into my mother's house. "Is it Joguth?" "Yes, mother, it is I." I walked into the dining room to eat my supper, with a heart full of fear and anxiety. She did not speak a word, but sat by me and bathed the floor with her tears. I looked towards heaven, and my spirit whispered, "Father, this is the beginning of the tears that must flow from those loving eyes of my mother. Kind, loving, affectionate as she is, I must leave her and follow the call of him who said, 'Who is my mother?' I desire to be about my Father's business, so strengthen me to bear this separation. In thee I recognize a heart more tender than that of earthly mother. Most High, I would not look around me in this juncture, but above, for all the help I need." After I had finished my supper, she spoke, "Child, I heard that you had gone to America." This information was given to her by a friend whom I had told that I should go to America very soon. I leave the reader to imagine what kind of a night I had. Early in the morning my dear mother, as usual, went to bathe in the Ganges. A young lady had given me her ornament to carry to a goldsmith to have it mended, as I was a friend to the low castes in general. I felt that I ought to bring the ornament from the goldsmith and return it to her, because if I did not, the lady would not know whom to ask for it, and neither would the artist know to whom to return it, as it was given to him in private. I went to that man, but he was not at home. In vain I searched for him in several places where he was supposed to be, and I could not wait any longer, because my mother would expect me to breakfast. I returned home by 8:30, I believe, took my bath as usual, and entered into the dining room for breakfast. The day before was the fast day of the Brahman widows. So when my dear mother sat down to help me she looked very tired, after 24 hours entire abstinence from food and drink. I put the things into my mouth but had no strength to chew them. A deep anxiety, love for my mother, the thought of separation, seemed to fill my heart, and I cast side glances at her face, for I knew that if I lived 100 years as a Christian, after my return from America, I should not be allowed to sit at meal on this floor and near my dear mother. She noticed the uneasy feelings, and asked, "Joguth, what is that cloud on your face? You look very pale. Are you unwell, child? Tell me what ails you, I am your mother. Can't you confide in me, etc." I knew not what to say at first, and answered, "Mother, a young man has a great many things to think about." After breakfast I entered into my bedroom and she followed me there. Not knowing what to take and what to leave, I walked from one end of the room to the other, putting my hand upon my clothes, books, pictures, etc. I sat on my bed, and whispered, "No more will my tired, sleepy, or sick body lie on thy bosom, no more from thee my voice will rise, in midnight gloom, to the throne of grace, no more shall I bathe thee with tears, which are counted and known by him only who knows no sleep." My mother said it was almost time for me to go to school. So I got up and thought I would not loiter about the room as it would create suspicion in my mother, and perhaps all my cherished plans and precaution would be crushed and frustrated. I must go without scrip, without a second suit of clothes, just as I am. The celestial voice bids me to let the dead bury their dead, and so I must not look at these things, my books, clothing, etc., useful as they are. God will provide me with all I need. I would come and see with a filial confidence how good my Father is. Just as I was, with one shirt and one mantle on my body, I went out of the room. My mother came after me, and said, "Child, how long it will take you to learn to wear your own clothes properly," and began to button my shirt or outer garment. I saddened at the thought that on my return from a Christian country, those fingers that fix my shirt now would not touch me. The last words I heard from her mouth were these, "Joguth, do not eat confectionaries on the way, you are sick, and can't digest those rich things, child. Come right home after the school, and you will find your supper ready." Mother, thought I, the supper which you so kindly wish to prepare for me will be, I am afraid, a two-edged sword for you. I do not know where I shall take my supper tonight, etc. Thus equipped with moral courage, taking no money, nor clothing, but a trusting heart, I left home and its inmates never to enter therein again, as my own. I commended my kind mother and other dear friends to the care of Him, the good Father of all. In order to make another effort in relation to that young lady's ornament, I called at the goldsmith's house, but with no better success. A dear young Brahman friend, who is a hearer of Mr. Dall, and to whom I had confided my secrets, informed me that if I would go with him to a public woman's house, I might possibly find the artist there. As there was no time to lose, and the ornament must be obtained and returned to the owner, I agreed to his suggestion. There, on the Ganges, stood the cottage of sin, and as we knocked at its outer door, a female voice inquired, "Who are you?" "Please let us go in," said my friend. "No," she said, "first tell me what you want, and then I'll see whether I can let you in or not." I want to see Ombika for a minute, and that is all. Ombika is not here, she said, and we heard her voice no more. What is to be done? I said. You come with me, my gallant friend replied. There is a large opening on the wall which would be a capital approach for us to get into the house. I hesitated a little, but he said I must do it, under the necessity that these cunning girls must be intruded upon that way. Slowly we walked to the opening, which was large enough to admit us both into the house. We found the artist there, and I asked him to return the ornament to me. He began to make excuses, said it was not quite ready, but would take a couple of days to finish it. Friend, said I cannot wait a couple of hours for it. I am going to a distant place, so please return it to me just as it is. He talked and argued about the matter, and wanted to know how long I would be gone. Of course, I could not tell him directly about my plans. He returned the ornament partly done. It would not have been safe at all for me to have returned it to the owner for two reasons. First, that she lives so near my mother that if I went to her, my mother would be the first person to see me, and her fears and surmises would be doubly confirmed by my untimely return from the school. Secondly, the young lady would feel surprised to find her jewelry half finished, and suspect my proceedings, and inform my mother accordingly. Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves is a saying full of wisdom. I called a boy, whom I knew to be very good and reliable, and said, Will you take this package to P tomorrow, and tell him that I desire him to give it to T. I charged him to see P the next day, because if the young lady received her ornament the same day the matter would be worse. My mother would know it, and my friends would at once start in pursuit of me. The good boy performed his mission satisfactorily, I heard. I begged my friend, who helped me to find the goldsmith, to go to my mother 2 days after I had left, and tell her about the letters I had written and hidden in my desk. While passing by an apothecary's I remembered that I owed him a little money, and paid him with the small silver pieces I had in my pocket. Much as I wished to reach Calcutta before the high tide, I could not. I asked the boatman to land me at Bagbazar, at the lower part of the city, whence I proceeded to Mr. Dall in a covered porky, or palanquin, as foreigners call it. Desiring to get a musical instrument, a flute, that I might practice with it on board the ship, and thereby cheer up the lonely hours, I tried hard, but could not succeed. Mr. Dall said he would bring me one, but, whether for want of money or of time, I do not know, he failed to do it. As I must embark right off before my friends could arrest me, Mr. Dall took me to his room and asked me to wear pants, cap, etc. Oh, I hated to do it, fearing the people, even the low-caste boatman, would laugh at me. I told him that there was no necessity for my wearing this strange costume here in Calcutta, that if I had got to do it, I would do it at sea. He would not hear my reasons. I told him again that the English dress would not help me to become a good Christian, it would only make me look like the strangest and ugliest creature in the world. Fortunately my logic prevailed, and we got in a carriage with our respective dresses. The ship Sabine, that brought me to this country, belongs to Mr. Tridick, of Portsmouth, N.H. Not knowing where she was lying at anchor, we came down the river as far as Bishop's College and had to go back again. She was near Barbogout. Leaving me on board the ship, Mr. Dall returned to the city with a view to bring the necessary things for the voyage. After dark, our party of 4 sat at the table, and another, the cabin boy, waited upon us. They all drank wine and ate smoked fish. The smell of these 2 things was so disagreeable that I thought that they were fit only for savages. One of the party, a young man with a large round face, the second mate, began to sing comic songs and make music with his feet, striking them on the cabin floor. The words of one of his songs were like these: "I love her, but she doesn't love me. She loves another. Oh dear, who can that be?" By and by the captain, Mr. Hendy, came on board with a few friends, and they all entered into an adjoining cabin. I retired to sleep, but these gentlemen made such a noise the most part of the night that I doubt whether the people within half a mile had any rest at all. The corks coming out of the wine bottles with loud reports, the gentlemen knocking on the floor, their songs and imperfect utterance of very well, all these filled my heart with new and various thoughts. I feared if these men were to be on board all the way, I had better learn Christianity in Calcutta, and not take the voyage to America. The first part of their singing was very good. I enjoyed one song especially, "I am bound for the land of Canaan," etc. But as they got under the influence of new or old wine, their songs changed into, "For tonight we will merry, merry be." The knocking on the floor grew so violent that I feared they would either hurt their feet or break the boards, and a Sanskrit saying came into my mind: "The animal with long, pointed horns and sharp teeth, and a man with wine in his stomach are to be avoided alike." By midnight I heard someone vomiting, and remembered the saying that the pleasures arising from dissipation and sensuality very soon bring sickness and misery. Early on the next morning, Wednesday, the 27th of January, 1858, Mr. Dall came on board with all the necessaries for a 4 months' voyage, and went down as far as the mouth of the Ganges, returning to Calcutta on Friday by the steam propeller that brought our ship down. Among various kind, useful, and fatherly counsels, he warned me not to learn the profane language that is freely used on board the ship, and wanted to know if I had any farewell words to say to him. "Take care of my dear mother" was my charge to him, which he has carried out in Christian ways. He also made a little blank book for me which he called my journal, with the following advice and instructions: Journal. I left Calcutta on Wednesday, the 27th of January, 1858, for Boston, United States of America. Resolves. 1. I will read the Bible as often as I can, and stay my lonely heart on God by faith, prayer, and trust in Jesus Christ. 2. I will daily pray the Lord's Prayer, and rest all my anxieties on "Give us this day our daily bread," and on "Thy will, not mine, be done." 3. I will try to read the Bible through, from Genesis to Revelation, on this voyage, and will make a record, if possible, of the best thoughts as they suggest themselves to me. For, in the Bible I shall look for my comfort, in the history and devout trust of the patriarchs, prophets, and apostles, from Abraham, Genesis, 12th chapter, the Lord said to Abraham, "Get thee out of thy country, from thy kindred and from thy father's house, and thou shalt be a blessing," through the Psalms of David, not forgetting the 25th and 26th. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, and they that sow in tears shall reap in joy. He that goeth forth and weepeth, bearing precious seed, i.e. of faith, hope, and holy purposes, shall doubtless come again with rejoicing, bringing his sheaves, fruits of his toil, with him. God grant it may be so with you, Philip, my son, my firstborn in India. God help you. Do you struggle, with God's help, to be an honor and praise to your family, your city, your country, and your friends, both in India and America, more and more as long as you live, and when called to depart out of this world, may it be to dwell with pure-minded spirits, with the holy angels, and with the just made perfect in heaven. Read the Old Testament, but make the New your refuge and your rest. Trust in Jesus' call, "Come unto me all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn of me, for I am meek and lowly in heart, and you shall find rest unto your souls." Matt. X 29. And again, I will have perfect faith in Jesus' saying, as in Matt X 29, "Verily I say unto you, there is no man that hath left house or brethren, or sisters, or father, or mother, or lands for my sake and the Gospel's, but he shall receive 100-fold now in this present time, houses, and brethren, and sisters, and mothers, and lands, with persecution, and in the world to come eternal life. But many that are first shall be last, and the last first. Often say, Jesus, I my cross have taken, all to leave and follow thee, naked, poor, despised, forsaken, thou from hence, my all shalt be. Perish every fond ambition, all I've gained, hoped, or known, yet how rich is my condition, God and heaven are still my own. A true Christian. Let me strive to be a student and educator, a worthy representative of my country, an ambassador from Asia to America, a mediator between the East and the West, the bearer of pure and precious hopes between two opposite sides of the world, a man of faith and love, a student of human life, a seeker of knowledge in distant lands, a follower in the steps of prophets and apostles, of Abraham and Saint Paul, a practical believer in human brotherhood, a pilgrim on the face of the world, seeking pearls of knowledge, a servant, minister, and angel of God, a man whose name is written in heaven, a man appointed by God to bring together the ends of the earth, a leader and a pioneer to begin the great work of union between the sincere and devout spirits of America and Bengal. Things to be done if possible while at sea. 1. Get the list of the books of the Bible by heart so as to facilitate reference to them. 2. Make all the progress I can in my Greek grammar, that I may thus come into nearer contact with Jesus' words of everlasting life. 3. Translate into Bengali, prose or verse, those great thoughts of the Bible which move me most deeply. Above all, put them into Bengali hymns, and so prepare in due time an original Bengal hymn book. Direction of letters. To the care of the Reverend C.H. Adall, Calcutta, India, Overland Mail, via Southampton. When you reach Boston, you will find letters from Calcutta waiting you at the office of Dr. Miles, which is number 21 Bromfield Street, Boston. Ask any Boston friend to forward your letters, enclosed in his, and he will do it. Mrs. Dall will do it once a month, if you wish. I will remember daily. 1. To speak out clearly every word I wish to say, and look straight in the face of the person I speak to. 2. To say promptly, yes, sir, no, sir to every question. 3. To walk my full number, 200, 300, 400, of rounds on deck, exercise essential. 4. When anyone speaks to me, my first duty is to look at him with respectful attention. 5. To practice writing my name after a good copy. In regard to carrying out the above rules successfully, the reader will understand it perfectly, when I say that as to the first, the ship rode on the blue waves of the Bay of Bengal, I felt seasick, and got rid of it only on the day when I arrived in Boston. Nearly 4 months, this great monarch, the most disagreeable of all diseases, had an undisputed sway over me. Occasionally, in very mild weather, I could walk a little and move about on the deck. My constitution is very peculiar, I shall never get used to the sea. It seems to me that if I were forced to spend my life on the sea, it would be under constant seasickness. A trifling motion makes me seasick. I have frequently been made sick in riding in stages. On my way from Fitchburg to Templeton, by stage, I felt so miserable, that a good lady, Mrs. J., kindly invited me to come to and spend the night at her house. It is customary in this country to offer the rocking chair to a guest. I always refuse it with thanks, for fear of its making me seasick. On board the ship I could sit at the table at regular hours most of the time. Knowing that nothing but land would cure this ugly feeling, I hoped that some provision, or water would be used up, and thus compel the captain to touch at some place for fresh supplies. But he had enough of everything. While we were in the river our table was furnished with fresh vegetables and fish, but as we launched forth into the ocean, we had almost everything salted. Never accustomed to eat meat, I found it difficult to get along, as most of the edibles on board consisted of salt meat of various kinds. 2 days in the week we used to have pea soup and rice and curry. To be true and just to the Sabine, I should say she had a large supply of provisions of various kinds, which an American would regard as real treats. But I could not relish most of them, being a stranger to their name and nature. Mr. Dall had a large bunch of bananas, some tamarinds, etc., for me, which became very serviceable to me for a fortnight. As the Hindoos are taught to share eatable things with their friends, I gave some fine bananas to the mates, the boy, etc. After a week I offered them some again, but one partook of them, and the other refused them with thanks. Now once, at midnight, a large, dirty hand was thrust into my stateroom and pulled some bananas from the branch. I did not know who that hand belonged to. The same hand helped itself with my fruits again the next day, and I could not help smiling. When I had offered them to the brethren, they felt delicate and declined to accept them, and at midnight came to help themselves. I took the bunch out and distributed its contents among the sailors. The captain, Hendy, was very kind to me. As I was the only passenger, and had none to speak to, as the sailors are not allowed to speak to any while on duty, I found Captain Hendy very agreeable. Mr. Dall could not have put me into the care of a better man than Mr. Hendy. He was a friend, teacher, guard, and pastor to me. Every day he would take notice of what I had done, how much I had read, what exercise I had taken, etc. Occasionally he would explain some difficult passages in the New Testament and other books. When less seasick, in mild weather, I used to read from the following books: Waverley Novels, The Life of Napoleon, Pope's Poetical Works, The Tower of London, Paul and Virginia, in Bengali, Dr. Kane's Arctic Explorations, the Bible, and Channing, etc. Besides, Captain H had American papers, such as Gleason's Pictorial, The Olive Branch, and the New York Ledger. This last paper did not give a good idea of American people. Its stories I found to be fictitious love affairs, sentimental. I felt surprised to think that such stories were put into the hands of the boys and girls. These will certainly corrupt them, and create romantic, short-lived affections in their hearts. The Hindu parents do not read nor tell the stories of love affairs to their children, because the influence of such things is very bad upon the young. They fill their hearts with strange passions, which do not belong to them. Hence, in this country I hear so much of elopement, coquetry, strange unions between a boy of 18 or 20, and a woman of 50. Mr. Hendy undertook to teach me American etiquette, the discipline at the table, in the parlor, etc., but he is such a jolly man that whatever he taught I took for fun. He would ask me every morning, and a great many times during the day, "Philip, how do you feel?" My answers varied according to the true state of my feelings. While sick, I said so, and while cheerful, I said so. But this would not satisfy him. So he taught me to answer him as follows: "Philip. Sir. How do you feel?" "All serene." Then he would respond, "Salubrious." He told me, in fun, no doubt, that in divinity schools they make such long prayers, that the students find their limbs stiff, having had to kneel down so long. I hoped my friends would not put me in a school like those, that would cause me to go home lame after prayers. We had a remarkably pleasant voyage. Very few storms were experienced on our way. One day, after a severe squall, Captain Hendy sat on the gangway, tired yet cheerful, and, as usual, cried, "Philip, how do you feel?" He asked me what I thought of the late squall, and hearing me speak indifferently of it, said, "Philip, you are just like a baby that knows not what is going on before him, etc." And then he began to sing, "From all that dwell below the skies," etc. He would not hear anyone swear in the cabin, and often would say, "Mr. C, the second mate, don't." Every soul on board was kind to me, and I trust I was not less to them. Antun, a Spanish sailor, hearing that I did not eat salt meat, gave me a sharp exhortation. "You are no good Christian." Me, the captain, Mr. B, etc., are good Christians. We eat beef, ham, pork, plenty, we fat, putting his hand on his stomach. After a voyage of 4 months, we reached Boston on the midnight of the 24th of May, 1858. Early in the morning, I got up from my bed and waited for some friend, who, as Mr. Dall had told me, would come to take me into the town, but none came, not knowing, as yet, of my arrival. One by one the sailors left the ship, and I was on board with Antun. The whole day passed, yet no Unitarian friend made his appearance to welcome me to the distant land. Not knowing what to eat, hungry and low, I sat on the gangway to gaze upon the harbor. I was delighted to see Dorchester Heights, which I took for a mountain, as I had not seen any high ground before. Looking at the buildings around the harbor, I believed they were churches, on account of the chimneys which our Calcutta houses do not have. In order to spend the time and forget hunger, I began to draw a sketch of the Navy Yard, East Boston ferries, etc. As the demands of nature must be met, I took a piece of hard, square cracker and a little brown sugar, and made a supper of them. In the evening I left the ship and ventured to go on shore in East Boston, although Antun feared I should get lost. Going a little way I came to a place where a young couple were sitting near the water. The girl went down to see whether the water tasted salt or fresh. I knew then that, even in heaven there are fools. Anybody who has even read of or seen the sea and its ways, knows, I am sure, that the water therein is salt. Next morning Mr. Hendy came on board and inquired if I were crying. I told him that my heart was crying indeed. He sent his boy to escort me to the office of the American Unitarian Association. As I passed through the streets I was struck with the neatness of all around me, except the dirty tobacco chewers and cigar smokers. The sidewalks were novel to me. Although there are thousands of foreign or Western women in Calcutta, I never was so near to them as to have any idea of their dress. The dress of the females struck me, and I guessed there must be some framework within, as it could not be that a woman would have such large limbs. I feared to walk too close to a woman, lest by coming in contact I should break her framework. But they walked so fast by me, that I felt thankful that their frameworks did not tear my coat. By 11 o'clock the boy brought me to the office where a young man, Mr. Fox, spoke to me kindly, and said if I waited a couple of hours I might meet Dr. Miles, the secretary of the Unitarian Association. There came in an elderly-looking gentleman, who, being informed of my mission, conducted me to the church in Bedford Street, in which the meeting of the association was in session. I stood in a small room leading into the church, and the gentleman took the letter of greeting and introduction from me, and went in and put it in the hand of the Reverend Dr. Lothrop, the president. I heard my friends say that only a half an hour before my appearance, the secretary had told the congregation that he was expecting me every day. I was led to the platform. The president received me by his right hand in the name of the American Unitarian Association, and gave me a chance to speak a few words, which I did. My appearance was so sudden, that I did not know what to say until I opened my mouth, but he who assured his disciples that they would receive words from above, favored me with the promised gift. The meeting looked so solemn to me, that the impression it made in my mind shall never be forgotten. The secretary of the American Unitarian Association took me to his house, where I stayed nearly a week. I had dreamed while on the sea that the secretary was a man of light complexion, without a beard, moustache, or whiskers, that he had a daughter 17 years old, and I would stay at his house. These proved to be really true in every respect. In the evening of the same day I attended the Unitarian Festival in the music hall, where again I had to speak a few words to the brethren. I had read about Christian fathers, mothers, and families, while in India, but now at Dr. Miles's I realized all. The gathering of each member of the family at the same table, the exchange of kind greetings between the sexes, their songs and innocent frolics, made me think that these, when perfected and guarded with unfeigned simplicity, and done absolutely for the glory of God and the good of man, are what might be angelic. After staying a week at Dr. Miles's, I went to board with Mrs. M., only a few doors below his house. This excellent family did not treat me as a boarder, but adopted me as one of its members. Good Mrs. M. says she lost her son of my age, who died at sea, so she regards me as her son. Not merely in words did they say so. In their untiring attention to my wants, in their perpetual anxiety about my welfare, they have shown a mother's and sister's hearts. They have done unto me what I could not expect from them. They resorted to every available means to make me comfortable. I owe my health and freedom from sickness mainly to their care. I did not know well the flexibility of the weather here, so could not dress accordingly. I did not learn to dress properly, nor even know the names of many pieces of clothing until now. It would take a long time if I entered into details of their kindness. So I will pass on to notice my other homes and friends in America. The executive committee of the association desired me to spend the summer months in studying with a country clergyman. Accordingly, on the 6th of July, Dr. Miles took me to Reverend James Thurston's, in Lunenburg, Mass. Of course I felt very much confused at the frequent removals from place to place, as such a custom is unknown to the Hindoos. This is a charming place in regard to scenery, and, above all, I liked it for its many hills, which I am fond of. The kindness of the family soon cured my homesickness for Boston, and I entered into my studies with a cheerful heart. There was one source of pleasure here which I did not have in either of my two Boston homes, that is children, of whom our blessed teacher said, "Of such is the kingdom of heaven." The inhabitants of this quiet place, both my Unitarian brethren, as well as other denominations, were very kind to me. The Orthodox and the Methodist clergymen, too, manifested much interest in my mission. The Methodist brother has more than once cordially invited me to speak to his people. The first time I spoke in the Methodist church I had rather a novel experience. It was while I was speaking that a brother close by shouted Amen. I thought it was a hint for me to stop, as in Unitarian churches, Amen is only uttered by the ministers at the close. As it was a wrong place to stop, I made a long pause, thinking that if they really wished me to stop, the pastor would rise and offer benediction, but nothing of this kind happened. I proceeded, and to my utter confusion, Amen, Amen, from different parts of the church. Immediately I stopped and was going to ask pardon, while "Go on, brother, go on," etc., revived my sinking spirits. At the close the good brethren explained to me what they meant by Amen. On the 2nd of October I removed to Boston, to Mrs. M.'s, in Allen Street, and there stayed until the 20th of January. Then my course was toward Meadfield, Mass., a place not so charming as Lunenburg, but it has more people in it. My host and teacher here was Reverend S. W. Bush, who is said to be, and I am sure is, an excellent scholar and good Christian. As my stay with him has been longer than with others in this country, I had a good chance to notice his fatherly love for me, and his sanguine interest in the cause of truth. Every morning and evening, while at home, his prayer has unceasingly risen to the throne of mercy for my welfare, and for the success of the gospel in all countries. His wife, as far as I can judge, is a remarkable woman, social, refined, wise, literary, and good. Both the husband and the wife have contributed much towards my mental and spiritual culture. The people in this town of Meadfield were kind to me, a stranger, and nothing has happened during my sojourn among them to pain my feelings. Besides Mr. Bush and wife, there were a good old lady and daughter, the owner of the house we lived in, who were not in the least slow to confer their blessings and helps whenever I needed them. The other clergymen of the place, one a Baptist and the other Orthodox, were not wanting in the spirit of love in their acquaintance with me. Our good brother, Reverend Mr. Sewell, deserves my regards and notice too. He is a Unitarian clergyman, preaching to the society in Sharon. Besides his ministerial labors, he does a great deal to promote the welfare of his fellows, and is connected with several beneficent institutions. He is an experienced farmer, a judicious manager of the schools, and a good, kind gentleman. I have had the pleasure of spending several happy hours with this Christian man. In order to spend the second winter, which is trying to those from warm climates, in Boston, as well as to receive instruction from the clergymen there, I removed to Boston, where I stayed till the day appointed for my start for India, Monday, the 11th of June, 1860. I cannot drop my pen here without recognizing the kindness of my other dear friends to whose care my father has committed me. I hope the reader will not regard me impertinent if I notice some of my friends by their names. I know there are others in Boston and in other places in the Union, whose hearts beat in Christian sympathy for me, who have shown their interest in various material ways. As they do not tell me their names, I cannot enjoy the happiness of thanking them personally. My Father who knoweth all and seeth in secret shall reward them openly. Being absent from my dear mother, I first recognized a motherly affection in the heart of Thomas Garfield, Esquire, of Boston. I cannot call his love and interest in me by any other name, as they were not common nor temporary. During my stay in this country, whether in Boston or in other places, he has exhibited an unabated interest in me, has attended to all my personal affairs, and I sincerely hope, while I am gone to work for God, his heart will find its way to India. His Christian wife and sisters have been equally kind and attentive. Mrs. G., of Concord, Mass., will be remembered ever for one among many other things. After my arrival in this country, Dr. Miles removed me from place to place as a raw chess player does his knight. My other friends did not have the opportunity of knowing whether I had all the clothing that I needed. The garments I had already were either too loose or too tight. Uncomfortably as I felt, I knew not to whom to go for relief. But there is one who is not unmindful of even the trivial wants of his children. He whispered to his noble daughter in Concord, and she, with other kind young ladies, made me comfortable clothing. Her interest for me did not drop down with her needle and thimble, but is fresh, and will be, I trust, as long as I stand a worthy recipient. The Christian ladies of Reverend Mr. Muzz's Society in Newburyport deserve my hearty thanks for their sympathy shown me in different ways. Besides the contributions given for my benefit, these daughters of God worked fancy articles and held a fair, the proceeds of which were given for my personal comfort. That noble woman, Mrs. L. M. Child, favored me with her acquaintance lately, and I might name many other kind friends. I deem it a privilege and honor to have become known to such persons. Reluctantly I pass by my excellent friends and earnest Christian helpers, such as Reverend Messrs. Hale, Bartol, Winkley, King, Ellis, Clark, etc. The last friends that my father brought to me are Mr. and Mrs. Spring, of Eagleswood, N.J. Since I became acquainted with them I believe that this gentleman is really Spring. His heart knows no winter. Such is his pleasant appearance and such are his Christian graces, that in a few moments I felt myself drawn as closely to him as if I had known him always, and as if his heart was my old home. The little children even have been kind to me and brought me their little presents. The first gift which I received in America, a handsome Bible, was from a little thing, Miss Lucy Sands, whom I called in the language of Bishop Heber, Golden Sands. A little girl in Newburyport sent me twice some copper and silver pieces, making 50 cents in all. She is the daughter of an Orthodox divine. A little child like this, so full of love and kindness in her heart, does not look like a totally depraved creature, although her father's theology would call her such. If my paper has no room for other kind friends, or my pen has forgotten to chronicle their names, yet I know my heart has room for them all and will never forget them. Their names have been recorded in the book of God, who will reward them abundantly for their kindness toward one who is a stranger, and an outcast for the sake of the truth. The benediction of our Master will certainly be pronounced upon them, saying, "Come, ye blessed of my Father, inherit the kingdom prepared for you from the foundation of the world, for inasmuch as ye have done it unto one of the least of my brethren, ye have done it unto me." Farewell. Brothers and sisters in the faith, the time has come for me to bid you farewell. The circumstances under which I came here just 2 years ago, and the circumstances under which I return to India, are quite different from each other. I came with fear, weakness, and low spirits. I go with courage, strength, and hope. I came here a runaway from the Hindoos, without scrip, or a second suit of clothes, but go with all the necessary help with which you have provided me. 35. I came to a strange land, with little hope of finding friends, and I go now with the pleasant memories of many friends, whose hearts, prayers, and sympathies will accompany me in my labor in the harvest of the great King. I have availed myself of every opportunity to improve, to store my mind with useful information. But I have studied or read very few books during my stay among you. The main subject of my study has been human nature in its different editions and volumes. The only possible way of knowing God and His righteousness is through human nature. The image beareth the likeness of the original. The son inherits his father's nature in a degree, so our common Father manifests himself in his child, man. Corrupted, mistaken, sinful as he is, you will find a great deal in him to remind you of his Father. In us there are only extracts from the sacred subject, God, but in our elder brother it is complete. Whatever we are permitted to know of God, and as much as is necessary for our life, comfort, and salvation, we may learn in the great volume of humanity to which Christ gave the finishing stroke. My friends had very many fears about my coming. First, I should return to India with the vices and dirty habits of this country, such as drinking wine and spirits, smoking cigars, etc. Second, I should not be able to stand the severe winter of this country. Third, being among the clergymen, who are said to be more sectarian than their people, I should go home a narrow-minded Christian. But I am happy to say, as far as my near-sighted eyes can see, that I stand above these fears. I never was in the habit of drinking wine or using tobacco in any form, and in this country I have carefully avoided these dirty things. Eating much or little meat is another ugly habit in the opinion of the Hindoos, and the native converts are often charged with becoming Christians simply for the purpose of eating cow and hog. Although I have no prejudice against meat, yet I presume that owing to my peculiar taste, I have not eaten as much meat in 2 years, as a boy or girl of 10 in New England would eat in 6 weeks, especially if Thanksgiving Day should fall within them. Having had no idea what an American winter was, I came unprepared, yet I have not suffered in the least in these 2 years. The very coldest days you had in the winter before the last, I rode in an open sleigh over the hills of Lunenburg, without anything to cover my ears. In the last winter, on the 2nd of January, I rode in a similar conveyance from Meadfield to Boston with no protection for my ears. Thus, I have passed unharmed through real winter days. Again, the good husbandman who brought me a tropical plant from his garden into this part of the world, put me in the greenhouse of your hearts, whose warmth, I perceive, is as genial as that of the glorious luminary that shines over the land of my fathers. Brothers and sisters, your hearts never stood below 0 in my case, never reached the freezing point, but always were warm, affectionate, kind. In regard to the narrow, sectarian feelings of a bigot's heart, I think I have very little to fear. I do not condemn nor hate anybody for his creed, yet, as a firm believer in the undivided unity of our God, I differ very much from some others. But I pray to God that I may daily learn to love all his children. I like the creed makers but not their creeds, if they contain anything that is absurd and untrue. I trust I have within this slender frame a heart whose commodious whole can accommodate Unitarians, Trinitarians, Mohammedans, and Hindoos, for he who has given it to me has given it on purpose that it might hold all his children. My visit, on the whole, has been a satisfactory one. Nothing seriously disagreeable has happened to injure my health, heart, or usefulness. No country has a canopy of clear sky over it always, no heart is beyond the reach of sorrows. The dark clouds have hung over my head, and thunders have rolled noisily, yet my earnest eyes have seen a clear firmament beyond, and I can say with fullness of heart, in trouble and in grief, O God, thy smile hath cheered my way, and joy has budded from each thorn that round my footsteps lay. The practical confidence in God's parental care is a source from which I draw consolation, courage, and strength. May we all truly believe that our Father is good, and that his whole counsel aims for the eternal welfare of his children. My second source of joy, courage, and hope is my confidence in man. I do not wish to lose my trust in him. If I am deceived by 99, I would still have confidence in the remaining 1. Thus with such views of God as a good, loving parent, and with such feelings toward man as a trustworthy brother, I hope to make my way while a sojourner in this beautiful world of God. In this connection I would ask pardon if I have in any way pained, offended, or done injustice to any. I know not that I have done so. Yet how many things we do unawares. A kind lady wrote me a letter and gave me some scoldings, saying that I had pained a great many for the seeming coldness of my heart, that when people came to shake hands with me and speak to me, I did not take respectful notice of them. This, however, is a new thing in my nature. Those who know me know well the average temperature of my heart. It might be, as she says, that, in public gatherings, when tender greetings have crowded upon me, from many persons at once, perhaps I have failed to speak to all. But this is excusable, I know. How can one person speak to several at a time? Frequently I have met 4, 5, or 6 brethren or sisters round me. I have used both my hands to shake hands with them. Besides, in my country, only one person expects to be spoken to in the same moment. Again, I do not, though I have tried to do so, observe the formalities and use the local phrases as much as they do here. There are some fixed set of words which the people use, such as how are you, fine day, or weather, etc. These do not show real warmth of the heart, but come out of the national disease of loquacity, I believe. My training has been quite different, so I am liable to make a great many mistakes. Once more, I would say, Christian friends, if I have done any wrong to any of you, take it as unintentional and overlook it charitably. Let it be known to you once more, that I go to India, but not to my home. You have frequently heard me say that on account of my embracing the Christian religion I cannot live with my Hindu mother and other dear friends, or rather, they cannot live with me. I am going as a lamb among wolves, and in days of trials, sorrows, and discouragements, I shall look first to my Father in heaven, and then to you as my brothers and sisters. I go to preach and teach the truth to my beloved countrymen, in your name and under your auspices, and I look to you for your help, prayers, and blessing. The cause of Christ suffers severely from the injudicious preaching of the missionaries who go out to India from Western countries. They think that anything outside the Bible is humbug, untrue, and nonsensical. They tell the Hindoos that their holy books contain no truth, and that they themselves are going headlong to everlasting damnation. These errors and follies I will carefully avoid. I would not offend a Hindu by insulting his gods, or puzzle him with a doctrine of a triune God and its attendant absurdities. I know the best way for me will be to take a Hindu saying, and present its truth in a practical way. In order to attract respect, I would rather appeal to the Hindu scripture, if it serve my purpose, than to Isaiah, Job, or Solomon. Saint Paul, while in Greece, appealed to a poet of the country, and thereby secured the attention of the people. One can preach years from texts taken from Hindu proverbs, such as, if you wish to be the greatest, be the humblest, feel for the world as you do for yourself. Will you say these are humbugs because they belong to the Hindus? No. Christ uttered these very things. What I most earnestly want to do, is to take truth wherever I find it, and present it to my brethren in the Spirit of Christ, and show its applicability to our lives. If we are faithful and labor patiently and prayerfully, aiming at the glory of God and the good of man, success will be ours. Our part is to sow and water, and our Father will give the increase. God bless you, dear, kind Christian friends. God bless you for your kindness toward me. Do not let the interest die out when I go out of your sight. I go to fight against sin, idolatry, and superstition, and you who stay at the camp, or in the magazine rather, send me ammunition and instructions, according to my need. This is the way to carry on work. Trust in God. India's future religion will be liberal Christianity. Farewell to you all for a while. If Providence spares my life, I may again, after 4 or 5 years of Christian labors, seek rest in your homes, and personally tell you about the work of God. And if it be His will that I shall depart from the world soon, what shall hinder our meeting in our Father's mansions? Farewell. Lo, I will be with you always in the Spirit. Heaven's smile be upon you all, is the prayer of your friend and brother, J.C. Gangooly. Cambridge, stereotyped and printed by Welsh, by Gilo and Company. Footnotes 1. See Appendix 2. In the English language there is no word to distinguish the brother's son from that of a sister. The Bengalis have different words to define every relation distinctly. They have words to denote strictly wife's sisters, husband's sisters, his elder and younger brothers, the father-in-law of son, the children of the mother's and father's sisters, and c. 3. See similar custom among the Jews, Luke 2. 22. 4. They do not use knives, forks, and spoons at the table, not because they are ignorant of their services, but they do not need them. So is the case with the table. They sit all separate as the custom requires, and wash everything, even the floor, after the meal. They use the right hand for food, and the left for the drink. If rice or any boiled food should fall on the clothes, they will be washed after the meal. Owing to these peculiarities, the Hindus do not use table, knives, and like Christians, who hardly wash themselves after the meal as the Hindus do. I have occasionally used the table in the place of floor, in order to follow the English idiom. 5. Means the son or daughter's father-in-law. 6. Foreigners have very imperfect ideas of Hindu temples. They think they are public places where people resort for the purpose of worshipping their gods and also for hearing the instructions of the Brahmins. The temples are for the former, and not for the latter purpose. In them are placed the images of certain gods, such as Shiva, Kal, etc., which are worshipped and taken care of by some Brahmins, who either hire or own them. People bring, especially on some holiday, their gifts of fruits, confectionery, money, clothes, etc. to the idols, and offer them by the hands of the priests. The low castes are not allowed to tread on the sacred floor, and they dare not do it. They are satisfied with the pleasure of standing outside where the priest comes out, sprinkles holy water on their heads, blesses them by putting his foot on their hands, and returns them their trays, baskets, etc. in which they bring their offerings. These are the leading features of the services in Hindu temples. As the gods are presented to the children as irritable, fault-finding, powerful, and fierce, the children fear, but do not love them. When a mother would not have her child touch any eatable, let her only say, "It is for the gods," and that is enough. But still there are several little ones who, by not being allowed to put their hands upon some tempting fruit or confectionery, because it belongs to the gods, hate their idols, now and then. My own younger brother, a boy of 4 years, remarked, "Mother, you say it belongs to Shulgram, that pineapple belongs to Shulgram. I know that your Shulgram is a mere pebble." 7. Being brought up under this etiquette, I did not look at the face of Mr. Dall or of good Captain Hendy in conversation with them. When I first came on board the ship, Mr. Dall, because I looked aside, before leaving us wrote down in my handbook the following: "When anyone speaks to me, my first duty is to look at him with respectful attention." At any rate, I did not lack respectful attention to the speaker, but his age and our idea of reverence attached to it bent my eyes downwards, that I might hear his words by my ear, receive them on my head, and obey them with my might. 8. The Hindu scriptures have a long story showing how Radha at once became wife of Krishna and of Oran. It is hardly possible in this connection to recite it. But let it be known that the Hindus have some reason to produce in defense of their faith, which they hold dear. 9. A peculiar religious ceremony, like that of baptism, is performed for every Hindu. The Brahman who does it, and selects a male or female deity for his disciple, is called Guru, or pastor. The disciple, Shishho, can on no account change his Guru or the god he furnishes. The Guru exercises absolute sway over his Shishho, just as the infallible Pope does over the Romanists. Guru has the power to send his Shishho to heaven or hell as he pleases. Without a passport from him, the gates of heaven would not admit the Shishho. 10. It is customary with the Orientals to commit to memory the names of the distant ancestry. Among the Jews it was the custom, and is so still, I presume. Matthew and Luke traced the genealogy of our Master a great way back. 11. Great respect is paid to the cat as the messenger of the goddess,